Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to some more Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. And I'm still on the grind, been playing quite a bit, and slowing a little bit down on the videos as I am picking up a little bit of work, so I had to focus on that. But today I actually just wanted to make a really, overall just kind of thank you video to this game and like card design. And I kind of just wanted to shout out some of my favorite cards from each faction, from sort of like a design perspective, sort of from like a synergy perspective. I think one of the best things about this game is how much thought is put into the synergies. And obviously, they had a lot of time to upgrade and update from Shadowverse 1. But either way, it's really refreshing to be playing a game that's not fully built around raw stats or raw power. Now, there are quite a few legendaries that are not only synergistic but inherently very strong. But we're not really going to talk about those today. I just want to focus on some really kind of interesting cards. I think cards that I'm just happy to see, especially as an aggro player, and how they kind of approach that in at least one of the factions. So I thought it would be fun to go over my favorite sort of synergy cards from each faction. And yeah, and thanks so much, as always, for sticking with me. If you like what you're seeing here and want to see more of it, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But other than that, let's dive in. All right, starting off with Forescraft, which has so many different combo pieces operating all the time. I kind of just want to shout out Godwood Staff. What's nice about this card too is, like, on its face, as a Magic player, you can look at this card and be like, oh, as long as I'm playing stuff out, I draw an extra card every turn. So I think about Phyrexian Arena, for those who remember. And of course, that's really good. But it also has its engage ability, right? Destroy this card or sacrifice it, select an ally and bounce it. And obviously, there's a million things that get value for being bounced. Namely, you're usually, trying to use this on a beetle to try and finish off your opponent. I just really like the design of this, right? It doesn't come down too early, doesn't come down too late. It's a 3 cost that you're usually just going to play it out. That's generally what happens on 3 play points for the Forescraft decks, or at least you're hoping to, because you really want to get this early to keep your hand very healthy. And then you're comboing it off after that turn and sort of like building your hand and building your game plan from there. And then you get this kind of huge payoff with your beetle to finish your opponent. And there's a lot of really cool, kind of intricate synergies that are happening in this faction. It feels like the one that you're kind of building your game plan as you go and finding lethal as you go. And although I haven't spent a ton of time playing the deck, because at times I get a little intimidated with how much you got to think about, and I still feel like I'm learning the game. It feels like a really cool class for anyone who loves combo. And Godwood Staff just feels like a very well balanced, important piece to the whole Forescraft machine. And next we got Swordcraft, and this is just kind of a funny experience of starting out playing Dragoncraft, switching to Swordcraft, switching off of Swordcraft to play more Dragoncraft, but the aggro version, then switching back finally to Swordcraft for the mid-range version. I had felt like I had a read on stuff, and I really didn't. I watched some other streams the other day, watched a couple top tier sword players, and shout out to BJ the Brave, who also does great content, had a masterclass with mid-range sword, and feel like I unlocked a bit of knowledge on how to play my favorite way to play Swordcraft, which is mid-range. But obviously, gushing aside, one of the things I really love about this faction, and we'll talk about Vol specifically because I just love the card, is Enhance. This mechanic, I just think, is exactly what aggro decks need. And it's been done in different games in different ways, but I really love that there are these cards. There's also the Hounds that makes 3 Hounds at 6 energy, or 1 Hound at 3 energy. With Vulse, often you can play this early and feel pretty good about it, hitting that whopping 5 damage on Fanfare, so you just don't have to play spells in this deck at all. You just play followers. But then you've also got this really good enhanced clause where On 6 play points, you can just slam this down, kill something. It boosts itself. It gets ambushed, so it gets to hide and maybe guarantee that 4 damage, and removing something off the board. Also, I love the animation with this card. But I just, enhance from a design standpoint is exactly what aggro mid-range decks need to have staying power. And I think this is why Swordcraft will probably be kind of the premier mid-range class for quite a while. And aside from kind of like super low to the ground aggro rush, which is really basically Abyss and Dragon, I think a lot of other decks that are more of the aggressor and not so much the control kind of have to play mid-range, because in this game there's so much value to be had. I mean, if you play against Rune and Portal, you know that sure, they can have their clunky draws, but at the end of the day, some of their golds and silvers, and especially legendaries, can just have value tacked onto every single piece of them. And so aggro decks can kind of run out of steam or run out of gas. Yes, sometimes they can just roll you over. But I think what's really interesting about Swordcraft in particular is that I don't really think they're meant to be super low to the ground. I think they're meant to scale up, especially with a keyword like enhance. And I really like that approach to aggro, because I think that allows you to basically play on curve as efficiently as possible. And I think that's what makes a good aggro deck, so to speak. Been having a lot of fun with Swordcraft, and I think Enhance is just a really cool design. Simple, clean, and works very effectively. All right, Runecraft, which I feel like I probably fight the most often on ladder, and feel like I have a little bit of a better understanding on how to play into, but sometimes this deck just really goes off, and it's quite scary. And there's a lot to talk about within this faction overall, but I kind of want to talk about, again, one of my favorite cards in here, Homework Time. And I feel like this is just such a nice and cool and interesting design, right? So three play points to draw to is just kind of a typical formula across like a million different card games. And I love that this itself has spell boost and can turn into looking smart. So it's awesome that it kind of has this, upfront, like very standard utility, but then can kind of combo off a little bit. And then you get this 1 play point, so 2 less to draw 2 and deal 2. It is to a random enemy follower. It's not always going to be good. Sometimes you're literally just paying 1 to draw 2, but that's an excellent rate. Yeah, I just love that Homework Time is doing exactly what the deck needs, right? Likely you want to draw those cards early, and just start, keep spell boosting your hand. But also, if you have this and you're spell boosting with other things, it also gets a nice spell boost buff. So, this card doesn't feel like broken or overpowered. It feels like a really nice synergy piece for kind of gluing your early game to your mid game, and that you get a little bit of efficiency payoff in the later stages of the game, while also potentially affecting the board with looking smart. I just think that this is a really neat card, and feels like a nice glue card that has some decent payoff for Runecraft. Okay, Dragoncraft. And I have been trying some ramp versions to not huge success, but I kind of wanted to go back once I got a few more pieces. And it's hard for me to say exactly why they don't work, other than I think obviously other decks have a bit more efficient draws. They don't feel as clunky. They've also got good late game, just as this deck does. But I think we're probably not far off from a good ramp deck. Maybe with the addition of the new cards coming at the middle or end of this month, so I'll be on the lookout. But I gotta shout out my favorite aggro card, which is Fan of Otahime. I just love cards like this, especially for an aggressive deck. I have seen this in ramp. I don't think you really want to be doing that. But despite the sort of inherent power of the card, creating a token that has Storm and Ward, which is just a really nice combination. This card is just really efficient for what it does, right? It's not doing anything so incredibly powerful. Like sometimes it's just not going to be good for you to use the fan, or sometimes you draw it late and that feels bad. But what I love about this card I guess for this particular card game is when you play the first one, the other two copies automatically become tokens, right? Like there's no downside for running 3 of this card. Sometimes in other decks, in other matches that you play, it's going to be a liability to have drawn multiple types of the same card. But Fan doesn't operate that way because essentially, yes, it is taking up a slot in your hand. You would have drawn something else, but you can turn it into a 2/2 Storm War token. And for those who have seen my Dragon Aggro list and video and have seen it on ladder, which I've seen, I would say less and less as I've gotten into like 50,000 rating with Diamond group, I don't really tend to see it that much. I still think it is kind of like the premier aggro deck. If we think about like purely aggro, where it's like you need to kill them by 7 play points, 8 play points, right? We're not dragging into like, the later stages of the game with Swordcraft. When you think about it from a pure aggro perspective, this card is so good. And I love kind of the flavor of this card and making the cool, Otahime guard token, and the fact that it plays defense and offense, guards your other stuff that you're trying to develop. Like this is just a really well designed, I think, card for kind of a niche deck within this class. I think obviously this class is trying to play big dumb dragons, but it sort of has this low to the ground aggro intimidate strategy as well. It really enables that quite efficiently. So yeah, that's what I got for Dragoncraft. Abysscraft honestly has become one of my favorite classes. I've been playing the mid-range version and tweaking and went 3-1 with my mid-range version that I've posted a little bit about on my channel. And I've just come to really love it overall. I think a lot of the popular decks tend to be very aggressive, but I really like their mid-range style. Kerberos is just a house of a card. Medusa can be really, really powerful. But the card I want to talk about is Mukon. Again, thinking about how synergy is king, synergy within classes, just a card that plays really, really well with all the other pieces that are fitting together. And this has just boatloads of synergy, right? So it's not a good rate without being evolved, but once it is evolved, you get so much more. And the fact that it has the static text of whenever an allied departed follower enters the field to give it Bane does mean that you don't have to evolve this in the early stages of the game. And in fact, you might not want to, because sometimes when it has the fanfare necromancy evolve this follower, which can be great, right, where you've got those 8 shadows, you might be sitting at like 5 or 6 and being trying to set up your Kerberos, which needs 6 shadows to operate. And the shadow management of the deck is actually another layer that I didn't really quite realize. And honestly probably is going to make this class more and more interesting to me. And so I do often find myself just playing him, evolving him, making a Bane ghost that comes in and likely kills something, and then I attack with my 5/5 Mukon. But he also just like devours boards with the Shadow Crypt Memorial. And the fact that it just gives all the ghosts Bane. It also gives the skeletons Bane, which are, running around in this sort of class as well. I just really love that this card adds like a crazy amount of utility. And I find that a lot of the games that I win is I kind of drain my opponent of their evolution resources because I can play multiple Mukons that just wipe their board or trade positively with little 1/1 spirit tokens, which is really crazy. You kind of think that they have to force me into a position, but also if I've got the necromancy trait on the fanfare here, then I just get to play this. It auto evolves, make a body. I just think that this card's really neat. It's got a lot of cool pieces to it that allow you to navigate different Abysscraft games. And I just, clearly really am in love with this class a lot. And I'm really looking forward to see, what they get in the future. But I think they've got a solid foundation, and I think Mukon has just been a really, really interesting, fun, and solid card to play for this class. Okay. Again, disclaimer, have not played barely any Havencraft, obviously played a lot against it. And Although I think there are a lot of cards that kind of, I just think the whole amulet idea like that from a card design standpoint is really cool. I am gonna pick probably one of the more generically good cards, just because I think it perfectly does what it's supposed to do with Pact of the Beast Princess. You get to play it for 2. Next turn, you can undo it, get your 4/4 Holy Flame Tiger token, which looks really cool. Um, and this whole like advance the amulets count by 1 with all the countdown stuff. I just think from a design standpoint is really really cool. Right? It sort of reminds me of oh goodness, am I gonna remember? I think it was just called Delay or something like that. It was a Magic the Gathering mechanic where you could pay a discounted cost to suspend, where you would suspend something, right? You couldn't really touch it, your opponents couldn't touch it, and it would count down, right? And so you'd pay like a smaller cost to then have that creature come in later. And so I think countdown really reminds me of that. I hope we see even more cool stuff for Havencraft that makes really interesting units that kind of synergize with the overall idea of either storming your opponent out or having just really efficient bodies to shore up yourself into the late game. I just think the idea of amulets and countdown is really interesting in a game that at times like you really don't want to put out a full board that's then going to get wiped by your opponent's Orcus, right? And so you kind of want to take more of this step-by-step approach. So I think Pact of the Beast Princess, isn't the only thing that sort of speaks to the card design for this class. But I just like the card. I think it's really efficient, kind of upfront, very, very cool with the Holy Flame Tiger, and just does what it's supposed to do while you craft your late game plan with Havencraft. And now we arrive at our last class with Portalcraft, and there's just a boatload of value on so many of these cards. I'm still missing quite a few pieces, so I haven't really played them too much myself. It's also not really my style for a deck, but boy, have I played against it over and over and over again. And the card that I want to talk about, and maybe this is just me as an aggro player, is Sylvia. This card feels kind of like a legendary. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But man, this card is just such a house, right? It's just 6 play points for a 5/5 that just base rate draws you 2 or heals you for 4. It's just like the perfect card for control, right? Whether you really need to get above a certain life threshold or you truly just need more cards in your hand, this card has you covered even before we talk about evolving it, right? And then evolve, select a follower, destroy it, and it's got a super evolve clause, select 2 instead. I would love to see more cards outside of Portalcraft, please, that have an evolve and super evolve mechanic. I think that's really cool. I think if we saw that on more cards, especially if we wanted to give, maybe the idea of aggro decks or particular class a little bit more, modality, a little bit of flexibility. So modality, right? Like the idea that a card is modal, right? You can choose different modes for it for different states in the game is an inherently powerful thing, right? Because the more flexibility you have to adjust your game plan, the better your game is going to go. Potentially the better your class is. And Sylvia is just like the literal queen of it for a gold card. This is just like filled out on so many steroids. And from a design perspective, it's exactly what Portalcraft needs to try and get into the late game, right? You think about, you're going to play Alouette into, basically, I will say as a mid-range player only, if you really just hit Alouette into Sylvia, into, maybe Noah, into Orcus, it's just like, it's so much value. It's so hard to fight through it. I hate running into it, but I understand from a design perspective why Sylvia is a little bit more powered up for this class to try and get it into the late game. And Sylvia kind of does it all. So I think from a design standpoint, she's just really a heavy hitter. And I feel like, you're never unhappy to see this card when you're playing Portalcraft. So definitely hats off on this one. This is a gold that will take it home, I think. So I hope we see a little bit more of that evolve, super evolve mechanic spread to other cards as well. And of course, last but not least is the neutral cards. And I know we are going to talk about a legendary. The other ones were all gold, because I kind of wanted to shy away from just the most powerful stuff. I really have come to love Olivia as a card. I just, especially as someone who plays aggro and mid range, Olivia's obviously going to be a little bit more utilized because it's kind of exactly what you need in the late game. It's trying to refill your hand. It's giving you a little bit of life, giving you a little bit of efficiency with the 2 play points to play a 2-drop afterward. And then you're getting to suit up, what likely in your aggressive deck is essentially a free super evolution on something else. I don't think I really understood how efficient this card was when I first started playing with it, and just how important it is for aggro and mid-range decks, because you get a lot of bang for your buck out of this one super evolve, getting another super evolve. I just think the card is great. It can be utilized in so many different ways, and sometimes you just play it to pick up those cards, almost like an Amelia from Swordcraft. But a lot of the times you're going to take advantage of her, and she's going to be a pretty huge swing in board presence, and is really just awesome that it's a neutral card. And I think it's so cool that there is a neutral legendary that can really fit into a host and slew of other decks. And I just think whether it's her her stats across the board, her fanfare, and her super evolve, there's just a lot of really interesting value to be had here that can synergize with a lot of different classes. So I think Olivia is also a really great card design win for Shadowverse. All right, folks, that's what I got for you today. Just kind of wanted to have a nice appreciation video for how much fun I've been having in this game, how great it's been. And although I get a little burned out at times and I'll switch classes and move around and complain about one class versus the other, which tells me that clearly I'm extremely invested in this game. And it's been so much fun and really interesting to try and master and learn about. Just wanted to kind of shout out some really interesting card design, and it just makes me really hopeful for this next set to come, that this focus on synergy and the fact that all these different cards can interact with each other in such interesting and beneficial ways. It also just means that deck building is always going to be very entertaining as well. So that's what I got for you today, folks. I'll probably be putting out some content around some of my favorite decks pretty soon, and as soon as we've got new cards to look at, I'll be putting up a video on that. So hope you enjoyed this little detour, just looking at some cool cards and talking about the classes today. And other than that, I will catch you in the next one.